Nope, we're having a problem.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Every Library Live, where we celebrate books, readers, and the culture of reading in libraries. I'm Gigi Howard. I'm from the podcast Drinks in the Library, where every week I interview a guest about their absolute favorite book and we pair it with a drink and we have so much fun. This week, we are spotlighting great summer reads. Who is ready for this? In conversations that connect you directly to the books that should be in your beach bag this summer and the authors who will spark your imagination. At every library, we advocate every day for the funding libraries need to serve their communities because libraries aren't just buildings full of books. They're launch pads for literacy, celebrations of free expression, and places where discovery never takes a summer break. While kids' summer reading programs are vital, we believe summer reading is for everyone, adults too. So, no matter what your age or favorite genre. All right, let's get started with tonight. I'm going to bring on April Henry first. April is the New York Times bestselling author of many acclaimed mysteries for adults and over 15 novels for teens, including the best-selling Girl Stolen, Girl Forgotten, who won the Edgar Award, Two Truths and a Lie, which won a YALSA Top 10 Quick Pick for reluctant young adult readers, and The Girl I Used to Be, which was an Edgar Award finalist and won the Anthony Award for Best YA Mystery. She lives in Oregon and invites you to visit her at aprilhenry.com. Hi, April.
Hey.
Glad to be with you tonight. Let's bring on Daphne Woolsoncroft. Hi. She
Hey.
is, hi, you are a Los Angeles native and the host and producer of the hit true crime podcast, Going West. With 150 to 200,000 listeners per week per episode and over 2 million monthly downloads, when Daphne's not writing or researching true crime cases, you can find her traveling to gloomy destinations, catching the newest horror films in theaters, or reading on the couch with your bulldog Dewey, who is adorable.
Oh, thank you. He's very chunky.
Oh, yes, so chunky and so cute. I love it. All right. Also with us tonight, I have Rickey Fayne. Hi, Rickey.
Hi.
Hi. So, Rickey is a fiction writer from rural West Tennessee whose work has appeared in American Short Fiction, Guernica, the Sawney Review, the Kenyon Review, among other magazines. Rickey holds an MFA in English from Northwestern University and an MFA, you hold an MA in English and an MFA in fiction. Sorry about that. Um, from the Michener Center for Writers at the University of Texas. His writing embodies his Black Southern upbringing in order to reimagine and honor his ancestors' experiences. I love that. And we're definitely looking to talk about that tonight. So each of you have books that are coming out like in the next week or two or coming out very soon. So let's talk about that soon. What are we bringing for our summer readers? April, do you want to get us started?
Sure. My book, When We Go Missing, is about a girl, Willow, who volunteers at an animal shelter. She takes pictures of the pets to make them look more adoptable, which is something that people really do. And one day she finds a camera card on the sidewalk. She takes it home, thinking that maybe she'll be able to figure out who the owner is. But instead, she finds it's filled with hundreds of pictures of girls. Some of them are neutral, some smiling, but a few look afraid. And when the police tell her it's not a crime to take photos of someone in public, she decides to figure out what happened to them, along with a new volunteer named Dare. When We Go Missing was loosely inspired by serial killer Rodney Alcala, who is known as the dating game killer. Also was just featured in that Netflix movie called Women of the Hour. And he was convicted of the murders of 9 young women. They think he probably killed many more. He claimed he could help you become a model by taking your photo. And police found a storage locker he had rented in Seattle that had hundreds of girls' photos, and many of those girls have never been identified.
Wow. I saw the movie though, so that's chilling. It's giving me chills thinking about that. Daphne, tell us about your book. What's going on in there?
Yes, first of all, April, that sounds so good. My book comes out July 8th. It's called Night Watcher, and it's about a paranormal radio show host, actually in Portland, Oregon, who gets a terrifying on-air call that makes her realize that a serial killer that she escaped during her childhood is back in the area, and he's coming for her. But even the detective doesn't believe her, and the people close to her in her life, like her dad and her closest friend Harvey, don't believe her. And so she's just trying to figure out if it's kind of like about the blurred line between paranoia and reality, just told through the lens of this woman who is confronting this horrific possibility that this guy is back.
Okay, I'm scared now. Rickey, what's your book about?
So mine's called The Devil Three Times. And it's about 8 generations of a Southern Black family that's repeatedly visited by the devil. So he made a deal with one of their ancestors. And so whenever one of them is in trouble, he sort of comes in and sort of kind of scares them into doing what's best for them. So like, for example, there's like one of the descendants of the woman he made the deal with is trying to run away from home, and the devil sort of just intercepts him at the crossroads and sort of scares him into, actually, maybe I do need to go back home. So it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's scary, but it's sort of like thinking about the devil as sort of like a misunderstood figure. So it's kind of like if things were told from his side of the story, right?
Wow.
Rickey, I was looking through your book, and I noticed that there was an 1856 chocolate old fashioned mentioned. And I host a podcast where we pair drinks with books, so I was like, I have to know more. Tell us, how did that all work in?
Yeah, so I felt like I've been looking for my signature drink since I was like I'll say 21.
Okay.
but I feel like something like I found old fashions and I was like, oh, these are really delicious, and I feel like it's like my drink. So and so I feel like that recipe actually comes from the distiller who taught Jack Daniels how to make whiskey. So it like has like Tennessee roots as well. So I thought, okay, this is like something that like brings it back to home for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. And so, so it's an old fashioned, it has the chocolate in it. I love that. All right. Perfect. Well, if you come on the podcast, then you're ready to go.
That would be the drink. Yeah.
April, also thinking about things that inspire us. And I noticed that you wrote that Roald Dahl had a huge impact on you becoming a writer. Is that true?
Yeah, when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, I fell in love with his writing, especially Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And I started writing my own stories. And when I was maybe 11 or 12, I wrote a story about a 6-foot-tall frog named Herman who loved peanut butter. And I decided that Roald Dahl would really like to read my story. And my dad showed me how in the front of the book it has the address to the publisher. He said, why don't you try sending it to Roald Dahl, care of his publisher? So I sent it off to New York, and eventually it made its way over to England. And then eventually he sent me back a postcard that I still have hanging on my wall, telling me that he had read it to his daughter and his secretary and how much they loved it. But what he doesn't say is he actually took it with him to lunch, showed it to his editor, and she contacted me asking if she could publish my story in a literary magazine called Puff and Post. So that was my first exposure to being a published writer. It didn't pay anything, so maybe there's a lesson there. But as I got older, I just thought there's no way I could be a writer, and I stopped writing, and I didn't write again until I was about 30.
Wow.
Okay. And what would you say to yourself when you said that first? When you said I can't be a writer, and then you stopped.
Well,
What was you saying
I
now?
grew up maybe similar to Ricky. I grew up in a rural area in a logging town in Southern Oregon where people just grew up to work in the mill. And I didn't know any writers. I didn't meet a writer until I was 29. So it didn't feel like something that real people did. It felt like wanting to be a magical unicorn. I mean, it'd be cool, but if you're not born a magical unicorn, you're never going to be one.
Yeah. But I don't think that's true. Do you? I think we clearly we found a way here. So,
Well, yes, I think now with the internet, maybe you could see that writers come from all different kinds of backgrounds. I was just doing it out of my own head and imagining where they had come from. And it felt like they must have always been super special and I was not special enough.
yeah. Well, I'm glad you kept going with it. Daphne, let's talk about true crime.
Okay.
Where did you get your start with it? What was your first hint that this was going to be a fun passion of yours?
So actually, my mother, her only sister went missing in 1984 in Florida, and she's never been found. We don't know exactly what happened to her, but we think we know. The story's really long, so I'll shorten it a little bit for you guys. She had an abusive boyfriend at the time, and he was just acting so suspiciously when she went missing. And her parent, at that time, she was 20. And her parents, my grandparents, were out of the state at that time, but she had been contacting them and explaining to them that she was afraid and that her boyfriend at the time, it's annoying to say boyfriend because of what we think he did to her. And she was very much trying to get away from him, but his name was Eugene. And she basically explained to them that he was hitting her and that she wanted to get away, but she didn't know where to go because she was afraid that he was going to find her. So when she went missing, he was acting very suspiciously. Police had a feeling that he was involved because of a crime that he committed like 10 years earlier. And there was no evidence. They never found her body. We don't know what happened to her. And then he fled the state of Florida and went to New York, and he murdered 2 other women and one of the women's children. And then he went to prison for murder for both of those cases and died in prison in 2016. So I was just always really interested in true crime in that way of like coming from a family where there's such injustice of never knowing what happened to Carol, my mom and her parents never hearing from her again or knowing exactly what she experienced. And so I thought I wanted to be a detective, but I don't want to be a police officer. So eventually I just got into podcasts and listening to true crime podcasts and kind of knew that felt like a more connective route for me. And I met my husband in 2018 and he was really into true crime. So we decided to just start a podcast, mostly because I wanted to kind of create this platform where I could eventually tell her story and get more eyes on it, because nobody talks about her case because there's so little like public information about it. So that was like the main goal for sure.
Okay. And how did that translate into writing for you? Or did they always go hand in hand?
I mean, that was like when I was 10, I was either going to be an author or a detective. So it just kind of worked out that I found podcasting first, but I knew I always wanted to write a book. I was just telling you before this that my favorite book is Frankenstein, and Mary Shelley is in my lineage. So I was just always really inspired by her, and that she wrote Frankenstein when she was 19 years old in a time when women couldn't really be anything other than a wife and a mother. And, but she still did, because her mother was such an influential figure in feminist history. And so I was always really inspired by that. And I knew that I wanted to write. I wrote a lot of poetry in high school. And eventually, after kind of finding my footing in podcasting, I felt like, okay, I'm finally going to explore writing and try writing a book and see if it works out. And I really enjoyed it. So I just like definitely want to keep doing that.
That's awesome. Good for you for finding your way. And we're staying on theme of like finding our way in different circumstances and surprising. I guess, Ricky, what was your journey like?
Oh, well, I mean, sort of similar to April, I felt like I fell in love with books, but it didn't seem like it was a real thing that was possible. Like you can write books and it's a thing. Like that just didn't click for me. So I thought, okay, if I can't be a writer because I don't have it, right? So I'm going to study literature. And so I started a PhD program for English Lit. And then like I got all the way to the dissertation, and I remember I was rereading some of my favorite works. Like I think Zora Neale Hurston was sort of like the person who sort of like tipped the scale for me. Like I want to spend the rest of my life with books. And I was rereading her and Ralph Ellison. And then I was just like, you know what? I really want to do this. And so, you know, while kind of taking the funding from the university, I kind of just still started. I just kind of put the dissertation aside and started what is now the novel. So it started from just like a deep love of books and not thinking I could be a writer to realizing, you know what? I want to, if I'm going to do anything, I'd rather fail at this than not try. So
yeah. And I feel like your story has a lot of connection with your family. I mean, just reading what you have talked about, listening for people's voices, and how is that reflected in your story? I'm sure that's so personal for you and such a nice gift that you're giving the world.
Yeah, so I guess one of the ways is my father he was a really great storyteller. Like it wasn't what he did full time, but people would, you know, they would come and listen to him. And I would always be listening thinking like, I can never do that. I can't just sit and talk to people and entertain them in this way. So I sort of, the voice of the book is really kind of like the voice he used to tell stories in that way. And also like the story of the family, I started researching my family tree, but I sort of hit a dead end around 1850. And so I thought, what would it be like to imagine what would happen? So it's sort of like filling in those gaps with like bits and pieces of like stuff that like my great aunt would tell me or like my grandfather told me. So I sort of just merged those all into one story.
Yeah. Have your family members all read the book, and are they super excited? Really?
Yeah, I'm sort of like, so it comes out next week and I'm just like, I hope it's okay. We'll see.
All right. Well, they've got to get on it now. Oh, man. April, you write for YA and you also write adult books. I'm going to put you in the hot seat.
Okay.
What do you prefer?
Well, it's probably been at least 10 books. My last 10 books have been YA. I've written the book that's coming out, When We Go Missing, is my 30th book. I like YA because it turns out I'm secretly in 7th grade. I kind of identify with 7th graders. I like how it's a lot of firsts. I like the fast paced of a YA. There's not a lot of dilly-dallying. There's not a lot of lovely, lush description of the landscape. And I love meeting teens. I love hearing from them. And actually in the last week, you were talking about law enforcement, Daphne. I've heard from 2 different teenagers who are big fans and are going into law enforcement because of my books, which is a weird feeling that I helped make this happen. So, but I love the YA space.
Okay. And writing for teens and seeing the outcomes of all that too. What's your reading life like? Do you read YA? What do you do?
Oh, I probably have like 8 books going. So I have a YA going. I have a nonfiction. I have an audio book, a couple of books on an iPad. So I read probably a third YA, a third mystery and thriller, and a third literary fiction.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Daphne, what's your reading life like?
I just love mysteries and thrillers so much. So I usually focus on that genre. It's kind of rare that I leave it. Sometimes I like to go into, like I just started reading over the last few months, the Sookie Stackhouse series, which I guess kind of falls into that, which I think it's different than what I usually read. But I also love horror novels. I feel like I love horror movies, and I just think that there are so many elements in a horror movie that you can use to scare somebody, like a jump scare, right? It's usually something really loud or something that comes up on the screen really suddenly visually. But I feel like it's so much harder to scare somebody just through words alone.
Yeah.
So I think that's such an impressive feat if you can do that. And so I love when a book really scares me, because that just means, in my opinion, that it's very well written. So I just love anything creepy. But right now I'm reading Wuthering Heights right now, and I just read Pride and Prejudice. So I'm kind of like leaving my typical genre a little bit, because I'm in this other era, which I'm having fun with. So
Yeah. I mean, Wuthering Heights is that's a ghost story.
Yeah, true. So I guess I'm not like steering too far away.
Yeah. Well, Rickey, ask everyone else, what's your reading life like?
Oh, it's all over the place right now. Honestly, I'm starting to get more into nonfiction, but also going back and reading like the books that famous authors wrote them, but it's not the ones that get taught. So I'm sort of trying to go back and see like for example, I just picked up this book of ghost stories that Edith Wharton wrote. And she doesn't write them as like, she was like, these are like real stories. She's just like, this isn't like stuff people made up. These are like real ghost stories. So that's cool. But I also love, speaking of Jane Austen, I feel like I got like when you're studying literature, they make you read all the old stuff. Like you have to like have a taste of everything. And I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be like a boring slog to get through everything pre 1800, but it's
kind of amazing though.
Yeah, I know, it's really amazing. Like speaking of the Brontes, like I just reread oh gosh, Jane Eyre. And it's so amazing. Like it made it into the book. Like there's a whole like Jane Eyre versus Bronte versus Austen debate happening.
Right.
Like, that's all because I love them.
That's amazing.
Do you like flawed characters, Rickey, in read? Because you were talking about Jane Eyre, talking about Wuthering Heights. We've got some anti-heroes in those stories. What do you think of those?
Well, so like I've always, this is going to be weird. I feel like the world is finally coming around to like my point of view. I was always rooting as a kid for the Disney villains. Like I felt like the beefs were like legitimate. Like I felt like I was like Ursula. I feel like she was like Ursula and Scar. I'm just like, yeah, I kind of see your side of things. So like I feel like things have sort of turned. So I'm always interested in thinking about, okay, like if we look at this from the other side, so stuff like now, like I feel like Wicked and like movies are starting to think about like, oh, okay, what's the other side of this debate? But that's interesting too. Like thinking of Daphne, your interest in Frankenstein. I feel like when we're taught Frankenstein, or when we're like shown the story in other iterations, like I feel like the monster's just sort of like, but the monster's kind of like really deep.
He's so deep, and he talks. Like in the Universal movie, he doesn't talk, and they just make him to be some he's just like a groaning dummy.
Like
he's very insightful, and you feel so bad for him because he just wants to be accepted, and everybody thinks he's a freak. It's so sad.
It's relatable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I just started. I started thinking about Disney villains all of a sudden, and I was like, Jafar was right.
Like they're onto something.
Yeah.
Oh man. Let's see. Who are some people that you look up to for some inspiration? Like who's some writers that y'all look up to and you think about when you're writing?
I have kind of a basic answer. Or like a common answer, I guess. I love Stephen King because I just feel like all of his books are really different. And I feel like that's such a feat as well. Like after I finished writing my first book, and I recently finished writing my second book in December, and I feel like it can feel easy to maybe get stuck in not one idea, but just in one realm almost. And he is so dynamic. And I just think that a lot of people don't kind of reach as far as he does in ideas and genres too. So
yeah, definitely.
For me, I would go to just one book by this author named Jen Phillips called Fierce Kingdom. I loved that book. When we were both up for an Edgar, and I was practically like drooling on her while she was like, who are you? But Fierce Kingdom, the character does some things that are unlikable, but make perfect sense in her situation. And I just thought, would I be brave enough to have my character do something like ignore a crying baby who might be killed by a serial killer, but she has her own child to deal with. So it was such a fascinating book. I ended up photocopying pages of it just so I could think about how she structured it and what she did and how it was very immersive. Just, it's chef's kiss.
Oh, love that. Yeah. Rickey, what about you?
I feel like for inspiration, I have like a couple of people I go to, but I feel like I'm looking more and more to poets. Like I just feel like the way that they work with language. But I feel like Stephen King's book on writing is like one of the best books on writing, hands down. Like he knows what
in
he's
general, yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like people I return to regularly, Zora Neale Hurston, William Faulkner, like those are my it people. But when I'm thinking like, okay, like if I'm describing a scene, how much do I really need to say? Open On Writing by Stephen King, and he'll tell you. Like just say rabbits on the table. Like you don't have to go.
Yeah. Well, and he always says the most important thing to be a writer is to be a reader.
Yeah, that's it.
That's true.
So true.
I think that's so important. I obviously I love books and I love reading and everything. So how do y'all are probably all getting ready or are on like the book trail right now promoting the books. Do you enjoy that side of the being a writer, is promoting it?
I do a ton of school events, so I'm on
Okay.
the road, fall and spring a lot, and talking about books. I love to talk to teens about my new book and tell them draw back the curtain and show what some of the research I did or where the ideas came from.
Yeah.
I think doing events though I don't know, you guys are probably it sounds like it's for both of your first book. It's so nerve-wracking, and your pub day is oddly anticlimactic. You're like, woo, but it doesn't feel very wooey. It feels kind of like, well, this isn't as special as I imagined it. So, I love to meet readers and talk about books, but I do feel like moments in the green room or something are make you feel so anxious.
Yeah. And think about research real quick. I mean, in comparison to how much you'd spend writing, how much are you researching as well, April?
For me, I research a ton because I don't want to get anything wrong. It really bothers me when I read a book, and I think that's not how. Like I had a podcaster in a book, Daphne. So I spoke to a person who was a true crime podcaster, focusing on cold cases in Washington State. Or my next book has a blind character in it. And I don't want a blind person to hear the audio of the book and think I got it wrong. Just think research is key. And with the internet, there's no excuse. You should be able to find someone to talk to, something to read, something to watch that will make your book be realistic.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of research, I'm guessing, for the podcast too, Daphne?
Well, there's so much research involved in just getting the story right, especially because it's just based on facts. And obviously there's real families who went through everything that we talk about. So just making sure that we're respectful and have a correct angle is so important. That's kind of why I wanted my first book to be about a serial killer investigation and have the perspective of not only my protagonist, Nola, but also a detective and at times the killer, because I have spent over 6 years focusing on that exact topic. So it felt like kind of a natural first step. And it was really helpful knowing what I have read and having like hundreds of cases in my mind that I like spent a lot of time looking into. But also, like you said, April, using the internet is so helpful for us in the modern age. Like I read like police handbooks, like, cause even though I'm right about investigations, there's still certain aspects of investigations that I don't know. So I talked to a police officer, but I also read a police handbook. And I think that's so important so that you're not getting things wrong. Because I feel like also there's always somebody smarter than you. who is going to say, no, that's not correct.
Well, y'all, we've had so much fun. We're at time now, but it's been just a pleasure talking with the three of you, and I'm so excited. So everybody this summer needs to check out Rickey Fayne's book, The Devil Times 3 Times, and Daphne, your book is coming. That's Night Watcher, and then April Henry, your book is coming out When We Go Missing. So
Yes.
those are the 3 books we all have to read this summer. This has been absolutely lovely. I hope all your pub dates are exciting and, pop some champagne, really celebrate it. So thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Gigi.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.